Good evening and welcome all to this special occasion, the launch of Aparna Piramal Raje's new book, Chemical Khichdi. My name is Radhika Piramal, and I'm Aparna's younger sister. Thank you for being here. We are here today to discuss mental health, Aparna's mental health, but also all our mental health. COVID has been a life-changing experience for many of us. We have experienced feelings of isolation, claustrophobia, paranoia, fear, loneliness, anxiety, and depression over the last 2 years. But what we have faced in the last 2 years is something that Aparna has been living for the last 22 years. Her own personal pandemic inside her mind has existed since her early adulthood. I feel that Aparna's book is just right for these times, as more and more of us are ready to discard the stigma and silence around mental health. We now realize we cannot afford to brush our mental health issues under the carpet anymore. This is an extremely important conversation to have, but it's a difficult conversation. Our mental health. There's great naivety and many misconceptions. Each and every one of us could find ourselves with a temporary change in mental chemistry, which could be triggered by stress at home, at work, a physical issue, an illness. We may not recognize it and hence be completely unprepared when we or our loved ones could be in a crisis. Aparna has not only survived being bipolar, but she has thrived despite her very challenging condition. Our hope is that her story can inspire many others to learn how to manage their mental health condition, whatever they may be, so that all of us can lead complete, loving, and fulfilling lives. I'm so proud of Aparna's brave quest to shine a light on mental health through sharing her own story. She has written an open, funny, terrifying account. I'll start by reading an excerpt from the book, which I'm very proud of this book, which I'll follow with an explanation of bipolar disorder, which is a very serious mental condition, as I mentioned before. Only 1% of people have it. I'll end with some stories of our lives growing up and how we learned to deal with her condition. Here's an excerpt which opens chapter 5. It's a journal entry written by Aparna describing her own behavior during one of her manic episodes. January 2013, Mumbai. I am lying on a carpet on the floor in my sister's guest bedroom, trying to sleep. I have given up on the bed. It has given me no respite. Radhika and Amanda come in to check on me at intervals. The next morning, I go down to my mother's flat in the same building and spend my day cleaning and sorting piles of books. It keeps my body occupied without asking too much of my mind. When too many thoughts take over, I crouch in the guest bathroom and record them in my voice recorder, only to delete them later. Mom, Radhika, and my husband Amit update each other on my progress through phone calls and taking turns to be with me. Back home, my mother-in-law Ai, my father-in-law Baba, and Amit are taking care of the kids and the home. We are very fortunate with our household staff. Each one of them has been with us for years and has a vital role in keeping the household going, whatever the weather. My maternal rustic nanny, Champa Devi, and my versatile cook and housekeeper, Ramu, are particularly adept at managing the kids and their routine in my absence and ensuring they are not disturbed. Within a few days, I'll be back. It sounds a bit crazy, right? Speaking to yourself in the bathroom? Well, maybe she is a bit mental. We use this word so carelessly in India. Experts define bipolar through two broad descriptions of the manic phase and the depressed phase. In the manic phase, it's common to experience feelings of heightened energy, creativity, and euphoria. In a manic episode, you may talk a mile a minute, not sleep for days, and be hyperactive. You may also feel like you're all-powerful, invincible, or destined for greatness. In the depressive phase, the patient experiences all the classical symptoms of depression, including hopelessness, emptiness, lack of motivation, lack of drive, purpose, or even lack of wanting to live. The causes of bipolar disorder are not completely understood, but it often appears to be hereditary. The first manic or depressive episode of bipolar disorder usually occurs in the teenage years or early adulthood. The symptoms can be confusing. Many people with bipolar disorder are not diagnosed or they are misdiagnosed, resulting in unnecessary suffering. Since bipolar disorder tends to worsen without treatment, it's important to learn what the symptoms look like. Recognizing the problem is the first step to feeling better and getting your life back on track. So say the experts. And I can identify with this confusing part of bipolar. The personality change is so subtle at first. It's like when you know someone close to you is lying. You know it, but you don't want to know it. Like something is happening you don't want to know to it. It's a tough moral call when your sister starts to exhibit personality traits that are new and somewhat disturbing. Was this who she was becoming as an adult? Maybe the world changed her. Was it the effect and strain of my parents' divorce? I honestly thought her personality was going wrong. I didn't know this was a medical condition. And for me, this was a big blow, because a major problem, because Aparna was and is my big sister and best friend. She has been my role model my whole life, the ideal, overachieving, exceptional older sister, caring, affectionate, thoughtful. We shared our room until I was 16 and she was 18 and she went to Oxford. And I missed her a lot when she left. Growing up, I would pile on to her and her friends, and to her credit, she always allowed me to tag along, which is usually not so much fun for the older sister. She led the way for me to follow in academic achievement from an early age. She was the deputy head girl of our school, J.B. Pettit. I was no way popular enough to be the head girl. I tried, but there was no chance. She's the reason I'm competitive and ambitious. I have to run hard to keep up with her, and especially because I don't really want to fall far behind. Her intelligence and drive led us both to Oxford, then on to Harvard Business School for our MBAs. As my big sister, she was always there first to show me how everything is meant to be done. A great advantage for me, and she made every effort to help me learn from her experience and avoid common mistakes. This is why when in her mid-20s, when she had her first, what we came to call her episodes, it was terrifying to see my intelligent, well-spoken, sensitive sister turn into a person I just did not recognize. It was alarming and confusing. She also resisted proper medication for over a decade, which is a whole long story for another time. So the first few times Aparna had an episode in her early 20s, we managed by taking her out of the city to escape to some isolation and seclusion of my uncle's house in Alibag, where she would not embarrass or hurt herself by meeting anyone. We would take her phone away from her. This is where my mother and I, along with a few trusted and supportive friends, would spend time at the beach, help ride out the storm that inhabited Aparna's mind. Jennifer Netarwala and Soumya Lashkari, thank you. Your friendship is worth gold. A fine line presented itself as us wanting to trust Aparna, but yet knowing we absolutely could not trust her. She would have nonstop energy for days. We couldn't keep up with her. We would have to take shifts. In order to manage her energy, I once challenged her to a race on the beach. I knew she would start strong, but collapse. So I said, okay, come on, who's going to reach that boat first? And she just took off. And I'm jogging slowly, and then she collapsed, and I aram se caught up to her. She was physically exhausted. Chacha and Chachi, I don't know if I've ever told you how grateful I still am for the sanctuary that you provided. Words cannot express my gratitude. Aparna would have stream of consciousness conversations with herself for 2 or 3 days, or sometimes 1 or 2 weeks at a time. These took her on the journey of the mind that was beyond reality. For the most, I could not join her in her babble. I would just simply listen in incredulity and frustration at her unrealistic plans and fantastic schemes that she would hatch to save the world. For 24, 48 hours at a time, she would not sleep or rest. Meanwhile, I in particular, would get more and more exhausted. And these confusing periods would come into our lives, usually at a time of stress for Aparna. Sometimes as often as every 6 months, sometimes not for 2 years. We experienced also good periods of stability, so-called normalcy, punctuated by these stressful 2 to 6 week periods. I was also extremely naive of her depression as a reverse side of her mania. The mania is a crash, and the depression is a dead and silence after that crash. It was devastating for me to learn of Aparna's experience with depression, which even I did not fully know until I read her book. I never knew, actually, about her struggle with wanting to live until I read the manuscript last year. And this mystery of mental health has revealed itself after 20 years, and she's written a book, even though I'm one of the 3 people who are her primary caregivers. And if I didn't know fully, then how can I help her? Now I realize I was unable to help in the depression side of things. Reading the book has made me much more sensitive and understanding. I would like to end with a quote. Until lions have their own historians, the story of the hunt will always glorify the hunter and not the lion. I say this quote for two reasons. Firstly, my mother, who's here with us, is a historian. She's a lioness, proud of her 2 cubs, and she is a lion's historian. Second, my sister is a brave lion to share such a personal story. A great problem in our society is our silence. We are always happy to share good news, but we are terrified of sharing our problems. When it comes to the issues that plague us, if we remain silent, we remain alone. If there's one thing I've learned in my life so far, it is to ask for help. What is the point of having experts if we don't listen to their guidance? And what is the point of having family if we don't have their care, support, and unconditional love? Like myself being a lesbian, or Aparna having bipolar disorder. As a family, we struggled for so long because we were afraid to share our complete stories. Now, Aparna and I are both out in the world. It has taken us 2 decades to understand Aparna in a much better way. It's unfortunate it took us so many years, but I really hope that this book helps others avoid some of these common mistakes and saves time for the people that need some mental health help. And actually, that is all of us, especially after the pandemic. Now,